Welcome to episode 165 of the Forward from 50 podcast, where we interview people over 50 who are pursuing new direction for their lives. It's an opportunity for men and women to tell their stories, their way, and in their own words. I'm Greg Gerber, the founder of Forward from 50, and your host for today's show. Today I'm speaking with Kirsten Samuel. She's a betrayal recovery coach, author, and speaker who said yes to a completely unexpected post-50 adventure that moved her from rural life in Colorado to downtown Chicago. Kirsten works primarily with women navigating marriage betrayal connected to pornography addiction. She also helps people rethink shame, identity, and what healing can look like on the other side of heartbreak. Along the way, she and her husband Dave also became travel coordinators for a Christian travel company and now work several cruises a year, which enables them to meet vibrant, purpose-filled people of all ages. Here are a few key takeaways you will hear in this conversation. First, Kirsten explains why the post-50 years are not an ending, but a reassignment, and why she does not believe God ever calls people to stop contributing. Second, she shares what it felt like to discover her husband's long-hidden pornography struggle, why betrayal cuts so deep for spouses, and how healing requires separate journeys for both people. Third, she challenges the shame that so many men and women carry. She explains the identity shift that changed everything for her, moving from I am not enough to the truth she said God showed her. Fourth, Kirsten talks about the problem of playing small, why so many people stay invisible because it feels safe, and how renewing your mind can help you step forward with courage. Finally, she offers practical encouragement for anyone over 50 who feels stuck, including one starting point. And that is to simply try things, experiment, and stop comparing your beginning to someone else's middle. If you are looking for hope, healing, and a fresh start for what is still possible after 50, this episode will encourage you. To tell us more about what gives her life meaning and purpose after turning 50, please welcome Kirsten Samuel to the show. Thanks for joining me today, Kirsten. I really appreciate it. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing now that's giving your life meaning and purpose.
Well, there's a lot of things going on, Greg, and thank you very much for allowing me to join you today. First of all, my husband and I made a major move 2 years ago where we left Colorado and moved to Chicago, Illinois. And yes, we are in Chicago, Illinois. We're right downtown. So that has been for a girl who's lived in the country for most of her life. I am now an urban dweller, and that is new for me.
Don't most people leave Chicago to move to Colorado for the wide open spaces?
Yes, but when God says, I've got a different adventure for you, you say yes, and you move. So that's exactly what happened. I'm also coaching. I've been coaching now for the last 10 years, primarily women. Dave and I do coach couples, but I'm a betrayal recovery coach. So I deal with women who are dealing with marriage betrayal, specifically pornography addiction.
Okay.
Never saw that one coming either, but it's part of our story, as you know. And so, that's another one of the things that's been happening. And in the last 8 years, 8 years, Dave and I have started working as travel coordinators for a Christian travel company that does events for nonprofit organizations. And we are having a blast. Again, never thought I would do that.
It sounds like you have gone forward from 50 for sure. So
absolutely.
What was the first step? Was that writing your book?
The first step was writing my book. It was I was right at the end of my 40s, early 50s, and the Lord said, it's time to tell your story. And I argued with him, which I usually do. And he wins.
Which he usually does.
Which he does. And I argued because I said, well, I've been journaling about it. I've been writing, my kids know the story. Our closest friends know the story. Some of the family knows the story, not everybody. But, I've been telling the story. He goes, no, that's not what I'm talking about.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that story?
Okay. Well, when Dave and I had been married for 25 years, and he came home from work one day, and I could just tell something was wrong. And I finally got a chance to talk to him after dinner, and I said, are you okay? And he said, no. He said, it's very likely I'm going to lose my job tomorrow. And which was very surprising. I mean, he'd been doing really well in this company and loved what he was doing, and everything was going great. And I said, well, The only question that came to my mind was, why? What's going on? And he told me it was because of a moral failure. And my knees buckled. And then he proceeded to tell me that he had been struggling with pornography for all of his life. And it turns out he was exposed at the age of around 5. He can remember what happened, but not the exact age. But it was around 5 because he knows where he was. And that became a lifelong struggle. So that started me and him on a journey to really understand what was going on in our lives. And in the process of all of that, and it's in the book, Choosing a Way Out, which, we can talk about, but God did some work in me that I desperately needed, and I'm grateful for today. But like I tell people, I wouldn't wish what we went through on anyone. But we are 18 years beyond, and as Dave says, we are 2 different people who are married to the same people for the second time, even though we never divorced, but it's a brand new marriage. God didn't give us back that was broken. He gave us a brand new marriage.
I love that. That is so encouraging for people who might be struggling through what they think is a bad marriage, to know that God can redeem it if both people are willing to work to do that.
Exactly. It takes both.
Yeah.
And you have to both go on your own journey. And that was one of the things that I had to learn, was that I couldn't manage Dave's recovery, and he couldn't manage my recovery from the devastation of what I discovered had been going on.
That is a topic that is very timely because it impacts so many people. I know I grew up with that problem for decades as well. So I know exactly what he's going through or went through. I read a statistic that 65% of men in churches struggle with pornography, yet the church is silent on that topic as a general rule. They might have a seminar or an event once a year to kind of bring attention to it, but you don't see many recovery groups. You don't see people talking about it because it is still one of those things that is kept in the darkness because of the shame. And while it's in the darkness, it percolates.
It does. And it really came to a head of society-wise during the pandemic. A lot of, it was part of the whole mental health issues that came to the surface during the pandemic, which I think is probably a really good thing, but I talk with women who, believe it or not, even though they may not have been the one looking at pornography, they are consumed with shame. And so one of the things that I want to encourage them is, we're going to let shame go because it's not yours to carry. And shame is not from Jesus. It's just not. And so I want them to know that there's hope. I want them to know they're going to survive, which is why I tell my story, because I survived, not because I'm a great person, not because I'm different than anyone else. There's so much more in our story than this little piece, and so many things that the Lord had to teach me and to change me. But like I said, I wouldn't wish what happened to us on my worst enemy, but I wouldn't change it for the world, because I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't be having the adventures that I'm having today, the freedom that I have today, the joy that I have today, if I hadn't gone through that.
That's a very
and
good
God
point.
Hadn't showed me that there's a different way.
I know I talked to a guy up in Wisconsin many years ago who had struggled with pornography, and he said, thank God for pornography, because it took me to rock bottom, and from there I found Jesus.
That's right. It took me to rock bottom. And I tell the story in the book where I remember the day. I can still see where I was, what I was sitting when I hit rock bottom in my recovery. That's not even talking about my husband's recovery. And I can remember the Lord asking me one question, and that was, am I who I say I am or not? And in that was wrapped up, and everybody, I say that a lot when I'm speaking or whatever, and I can see people nodding, yeah, he is. And I'm like, be careful how you answer that. Because if God is who he says he is, then is there anything that is impossible with God?
No.
So that means that even though this was one of the most painful things that I've ever gone through in my life, if God was who he said he was, could he bring me through that? Yes.
Yep.
But I had to be willing to go through it. He wasn't going to get me around it, under it, over it, or just, like poof, it's gone, like, the magic fairy. He wasn't going to do that. I had to go through it.
People think this is a problem that affects primarily younger people, but I don't think that's the case. I think it will even hit people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Yes. And I also want men to hear this from me, from the wife, okay? The shame that you might be feeling, I'm so sorry, but there's a way through it for you too. And that was what my husband chose. It's what you chose, Craig.
Mm-hmm.
There's a way through it. And I want you to experience that healing too, just as much, if not more so, because when that happens, I've seen the change in you, Greg. I've seen the change in my husband. And man, it is exciting. What God can do, D.L. Moody said that what God can do with a man who is on his knees and who will submit to the Lord. What God will do. It's exciting. It's unimaginable what God will do with a person who will get down on their knees before him and submit.
Many people think that pornography is a victimless crime because it really doesn't impact real people, right? We're talking images or videos, et cetera, or going to clubs, things like that. But you felt betrayed when you uncovered the fact that your husband was engaged in that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ripple effect of engaging in pornography, whether you're male or female, because the numbers for women are rising.
Yes.
And it's very discouraging to see that. But what is going on, the ripple effect, is it affects, like me, the spouse.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It affected our children. When we had to tell our children, how did they respond? It affected our relationships with our friends. When the story started to come out, it affected our relationship in our church. It affected my husband's relationship at work. His employer had a no tolerance policy. So this was what started this whole ball, was they discovered what was going on. And no, he did not lose his job. That's also a story in the book. He did not lose his job, but there were some very stringent measures he had to comply with. It altered our life. But let's talk about what's on the other side of the camera. It is not a victimless crime. The tie from pornography to sexual trafficking
Exactly.
is so strong and so deep. And I tell young men who will quip at me, well, it's not a big deal. Really? Do you want your sister in that picture? How about your mother?
Right.
Now imagine your daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Exactly.
These are people.
That is a problem.
So a child is going to learn what they see modeled. I was an education major in college, and one of my jobs, in the last 100 years has been a school administrator. And so children are going to they're going to learn what they're taught.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't teach them that there is a right and a wrong, that God has things to say about how we treat our bodies, how we treat other people, the eternal significance of every person that walks this earth. And why is every person eternally significant? Because they're created in the image of God.
That's right.
And nobody gets to take that away. Nobody gets to say, well, you're more significant than somebody else.
Right. You had mentioned that pornography is a problem that affects women as well. But I think when we say that, women think, I'm not looking at those dirty pictures, etc. But they are buying those romance novels, which are just as full of word imagery that can make them less attached to their husbands, let's say. Would you agree with that?
Yes. One of the things that, as I worked through my healing process, the Lord challenged me on some books that I had been reading. And one of the things was he asked me to define pornography for myself. I knew what the general definition of pornography was, but the way that the Lord challenged me was, he said, how would you define pornography? And here's what I came up with, Greg. Anything that causes me to have a sexual reaction to another person who's not my husband. Anything. That could be music. It could be a book I'm reading. It could be a movie. It could be a television show. It could be an interaction with a coworker. I mean, that's broad, and that's my definition. That's where the Lord brought me. But it opened my eyes to the pervasiveness of pornography. All you have to do is watch commercials and you'll see pornography.
That's right. There was a Supreme Court justice who years ago, when that court was trying to identify what pornography was, the judge said, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it.
But I know it when I see it.
So that is hard.
It is hard. But the good news is we don't have to buy into it.
Right.
And that's what I want people to hear is there's hope. There's hope that our children don't have to grow up where everything looks like it's headed. However, we have to stand up.
There is a fight.
There is a fight. Never in my life did I dream that I would be coaching women who are struggling with the damage of pornography into their relationships. That never entered my mind. When I was a little girl, that wasn't the thing I wanted to become. Okay?
Exactly.
Now, become a wife and a mom? Yes, maybe a school teacher, something like that, a business person, whatever. Never in my life was that on my radar.
And how is it a betrayal for women? Touch on that a little bit.
I described the feeling of betrayal as my husband had stuck a dagger in my heart and he kept turning it.
Oh.
That's the depth of the pain that I felt. It attacked me on every level. I felt ugly. I felt unworthy to be loved. I felt unseen.
Inadequate.
I felt thrown away. It devalued me. It was amazing when I started to realize the lies now that were coming to the surface that I was hearing that really attacked me in my significance, in my value. And one of the things that several years ago, as I was working through another layer of all of this, about 10 to 15 years ago, this happened. And I asked the Lord, I said, who do you say that I am? Because
you asked the Lord that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I had been studying the scripture. Now you have to understand, I'm a Bible school graduate. I grew up with a mother who believed that you were to be in the Word all the time. She taught the Bible. I grew up in a idyllic, really, family where I was loved. I was accepted. I had all of the things that you would not think someone would go through the struggles that I went through, because the background didn't match. I had it all. But when this happened, I doubted absolutely everything. It stripped me bare. And I asked the Lord finally, when I'd healed through enough things, I finally said, Lord, how do you see me? And you know the word that he gave me? Worthy.
That's good to meditate on that.
Worthy. Because what did I tell you was the first thing that got attacked?
You're not enough.
I'm not enough. You're not worth it.
Right.
You're not worth being loved. And the Lord said, no, you're worthy.
That's a wonderful story. And I understand that you wrote a second book to help moms overcome some of the lies that they're believing as well. What are some of those lies? Are they related to the first book?
They are. The first one is I'm not as good a mom as somebody else. My friend's a much better mom than I am.
You see that on social media all the time. That drives that point home.
Right. Comparison kills every single time.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wins when we compare. The truth is, you are the exact mother that child needs. Because God said so. That's the truth.
Yep.
Another one is, I'm ruining my kids for the rest of their life. Okay, that was one I thought as a mom. I'm ruining my kids. My kids, they're just going to be a hot mess. And God says, no. You're not perfect. But if you're going to engage, if you're going to walk with me and go here, I'm going to give you the tools. I'm going to give you the insight. I'm going to give you the wisdom to rear these children to love me.
And the strength. Sometimes it's hard being a parent of multiple kids. Yes.
Yeah. One of them is I'll never measure up.
Mm-hmm.
Again, comparison. Again, I'm not worthy. I'm not enough. I'm not. And all of those I am statements are statements of identity, as you know. When we say I am something, we are taking that like a coat and putting it on and saying that's who we are. And most of those things are lies. And as a 55-year-old woman, when I started coaching, I had to confront all those lies in myself as I was coaching other women. Because they would come up and I'd feel the Lord say to me,
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to deal with this one now? As I'm coaching the other woman through this. And all of these things, all of these identity statements, and now I go back to I'm worthy.
Mm-hmm.
I am worthy, which cancels out so many of these other ones. And I'm worthy not because I'm all that, but I'm worthy because Jesus said I am worthy. He died on the cross for every single one of us.
Right.
I get included in every single one of us. And if he's willing to do that, and if he says, I created you in my image, then I am worthy. I have eternal significance, and nobody gets to take that away from me.
That is an amazing mindset that people really need to dwell upon some more, because culture tells us we're a mistake.
Yeah.
We just happen by accident. We don't really have a purpose. Yet Scripture says that we were created by God himself and given the skills and the talents to do a specific thing.
Right. In the Psalms, he tells us that before you were born, I knew you. I knew you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, think on that for a while. It kind of blows your mind.
Indeed.
So therefore, you can't be an accident if you were known before you were born.
Exactly. Tell us about your travel experience. How did you get this gig to start developing cruises for nonprofits?
Well, like I said, we're travel coordinators. And what happened was in 2007, Dave's employer hired this company to do an anniversary trip for the company for their donors. And Dave was asked to go along, and they graciously invited me to go. And I'm not a big ocean person, so it was kind of like, but it was an inside passage. We were going to Alaska, and I always wanted to go to Alaska. My aunt and uncle and cousins had been on something similar, and they said, oh, you have got to go. It's the most amazing thing. So I went, and I was grateful, and I had zero responsibility. So I really had fun. I got to go and just kind of watch the scenery and do my thing. And, oh, yeah, there's a program. I probably should show up. But, I went and did my own thing most of the time. And Dave and I got to get off and do some excursions and explore some of Southeast Alaska and just fell in love with it. Then when we were done, the company, one of the vice presidents was on that trip, on that cruise, and he talked to Dave and asked Dave, because Dave had done some technical directing type work during that cruise. And they said, hey, if you're ever interested in doing some of that similar work, talk to us, because we need people that periodically are available that could do this with us. And he was talking about being a technical coordinator for them, a production coordinator. Well, Dave didn't have any time. So in 2011, when he was riffed from his job, and we say that, but we laugh because we know that God said, you're not going to leave on your own because you're a very loyal person. So I'm just going to push you right out the door because it's time for you to do something else. So that's really what happened. When we look back on it, we can see very much that God was trying to get him to go out the door, but, Dave just didn't make that decision. So God said, okay, fine, I'll do it. Mm-hmm. And there you are, you're out the door. So Dave called the company back up and said, hey, do you remember me? And they said, well, yes, we do. And so about 4 months later, he worked his first cruise. He fell in love with it. And so about let's see, that was 11, about 7 years later, they asked if I would be willing to do it as well. And by that point, we were at a place in our life where I had more freedom to travel than I'd had before because of other life circumstances. And so I went in the fall of 2018. I worked my first cruise, which was a New England cruise, which was fantastic. We went up and around Nova Scotia, and Oh, it's just gorgeous. Just loved it. Came down the St. Lawrence Seaway, which, I was so excited. I couldn't hardly stand it. And I've been doing that. I mean, we do about 3, maybe 4 cruises a year, and we just love it. We've gotten to meet some of the most fantastic people, Greg, people over 50 who are vital and strong, and they're on a new adventure, and they get to tell us about it. I mean, I remember on one cruise, I'll tell you a real quick story. We were on one cruise, and there was a woman in a wheelchair. She was just absolutely adorable, and she was so funny. And there was another woman pushing her, and they were both gray hairs, And I said, all of a sudden it came up. It was her birthday during the cruise. She was turning 94 years old, if I remember right. And her friend who was pushing her was 91 or 92. These ladies never missed a port. They were out doing all of this stuff. And I was talking with her, and she just said, life is so much fun. There's so many things for me to learn and explore. Mm-hmm. And, she couldn't do all the walking, so that's why they had the wheelchair for her. But that didn't slow her down. Mm-hmm. And it didn't slow her friend down pushing the wheelchair.
I love that story because people realize that there is a lot to live for and that it can be fun if they'll shut off the television and go do something.
Yeah, every time I think about, I can't do this, I'm like, oh, yeah, really? Think about her. So I've gotten to meet some wonderful authors. This last summer I got to actually meet Anne Graham Lotz and Joel Rosenberg, who are 2 of my favorite authors. Opportunity to meet them through this company, and just have had some wonderful. God has been so good. I mean, Dave and I look at each other and shake our head and think, "Wow, how in the world did this happen?"
Is this something that other people would be able to do as well?
As far as the coordinating, mm-hmm. I would look for opportunities. The company that we work for, they're very selective. Usually it's because they've met you, they've known you, or whatever, but there are lots of opportunities out there. There are people on one of the cruise ships we were on last summer. There was a couple on there who they're on the ship for, can't remember how many months. They're on the ship. And they're going around as pastors, just to be there, to meet with people, to be someone who can, if somebody's struggling with something, they're there to be along. They are there to serve and to love on people. I mean,
that is, and a cruise itself.
Yeah.
Are they paying their own
company,
way?
They have, I don't know if they're paying their own way, but they have a badge from the cruise company that has the cruise company's name on it. Looks like an employee badge, and they're on there, and they were just a hoot. I mean, they said, we love it. We love what we're doing. They're in their 60s or 70s when they're doing this.
That is neat.
Yeah.
And you also started ghostwriting books for other people. What got you into that?
My business coach called me one day and said, would you ever consider doing this? And I said, I don't know what that means, And so basically I started, and the first book that I wrote ended up becoming a bestseller. Now that book is a great opportunity to meet the author of the book, to learn the story. I had to learn the art of interview and what kind of questions to ask. We published that book. Dave, my husband, recorded the audiobook for it. That book has gone on now. I just heard from the author about this in the last couple of years, that schools are picking it up as a leadership book. His story, because it was all about becoming elite in leadership. And he uses it, even though he's a wrestling coach, he uses that story to teach leadership principles. And I was so excited for him. I was just like, that is so cool. And I did another one for a financial investor who his book hit #1 and is still up there. And again, I talked with him, and he had a couple of rewrites he wanted to do later on. And we worked through those with him. I've done several financial books for people. I got to work with one of the premier copywriting people in the world, where I collaborated with him to turn a live event into a book. I'm working on another one with him right now. And just the people you get to meet when you'll go on the adventure has just the things that the Lord has taught me, the things I've learned about myself. they're just fantastic.
I think everybody has a story, and it would be really good if we could get those captured and preserved for other generations to use. So how did you get your gigs to get this started? Did they just come to you out of the blue, or did you have to go looking?
Well, like I said, my business coach connected me with the first one, and most of them have come through either him or someone else then that I worked with, contacted. The one with the copywriter was through another contact similar to my business coach, but who said, hey, I met you at a conference. You and I talked. I think you might be a good one. Would you consider this project? And when I said, well, what is it? And kind of gave me a little bit of the story. He said, why don't you meet with the author? And I met with the author. We just had a great time. We connected really well. And I said, yeah, here's what I can do and here's what I can't do. And so the first book went out. It's still selling gangbusters because it's brilliant. And he's hilarious. So getting to, take his recorded material and turning it into a book is basically what I did. And it's what I'm doing on the second one. It's just so fun to be able to kind of get into his world and do it for that.
Mm-hmm. Speaks to the value of networking, because many people get these jobs not because somebody posted it on the internet or online, wherever, that I'd like to hire this person. It's through people you know. It's called the power of who.
Right.
But it's amazing how you can get connected to folks through that. That's why it's also important for people over 50 to not give up on networking, because they never know that they can help somebody else. Because I have a friend of a friend of a friend who's looking to hire a writer, that type of thing.
Yeah.
It's just amazing how that can come about.
It is. And, and like when my husband, when God kicked him out of his job, he was 50. And so he was starting over. And we had no idea he said, who's going to hire me now? And, I look at all of we look at each other and he says he still pinches himself because he's now a professor teaching young people all of the things that he has learned and all of his passion. He's getting to pour into them. He goes, I'm in the best job of my life.
Amazing how that happens, isn't it?
Yeah. And we're at retirement, and we're at the classic retirement age. And everybody says, well, when are you going to retire? And Dave goes, I don't know.
That's right.
Says I'm retiring,
Exactly. Slowing down maybe, but, not retiring. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, even, we've been asked, are you going to keep working cruises? And we said, as long as they'll let us.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Because we just have fun.
And having fun, helping people to have fun is a great job to have.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's hard work. I mean, we work long hours. There's days that we work long hours and you're tired. I sleep really well, but it's still just so, every cruise is so interesting. Every place that we've gotten to go has been just fantastic. And like I said, I've just met so many interesting people. I've met other authors who, have told me some part of their story or handed me a copy of their book, which is really fun. I've had people talk to me about, in fact, the owner of the company, there was somebody talking to him about writing a book and said, you need to talk to Kirsten. And so he directed them to me, and I, was able to give them the direction that they needed. It wasn't they needed me to write. It was, I have some questions about what does it do? Well, let me connect you with some people, and let them get going. I don't know if they've ever done anything with it. Not on me. It's on them. But just being able to say, hey, let me, do this. Another woman, just encouraging her that she needed to give a speech and she was kind of nervous about it. And she said, well, maybe I should talk to this person who was also in the group. And I said, I was able to just look at her and say, coaching hat came on. Did the Lord give you this opportunity? And because she's older, like we are. And she said, well, yes. And I said, then obviously he's going to equip you.
Right.
A couple days later, she came back to me and she goes, I have the whole speech written. And she was so excited. And I was just like, yes. I said, you've got this. Mm-hmm. You can, God has given you an opportunity. He's lifting you up. He's raising you into this position for something that's going to bring him honor and glory.
That's right. I also think people need to realize that if God gives you an assignment, he's going to provide the funding and resources to get it done.
He is.
Yep.
And it's the strength and the clarity and the mind,
Exactly.
the brain fog is going to lift and all of that. And you're going to be able to do it. And I have to keep reminding myself of that.
Absolutely. If you could turn the clock back, is there anything you'd do differently?
Yes,
Of course.
I would have stopped playing small a long time ago.
Great advice. How were you playing small?
I was just hiding in the background and not, I was embarrassed really about the fact that the Lord had given me some administrative gifts. He has given me the ability to use language to communicate. The other thing I told you, I do speaking. And again, when I was a little girl, that never would have entered my mind, getting up and speaking in front of large crowds, and to see how when the Lord empowers you to do something like that, when he gives you that message to give to somebody, how he just energizes you through that. When I was in my 20s and 30s, I was just very content to not be seen at all.
Invisible, yes.
Invisible, because it felt safe. Yes, I was taking care of my children. I was taking care of my home. I was doing what the Lord had put in front of me at that time. I was supporting my husband in his job. But I think there were other things that I could have spoken more into the mother groups that I was a part of. Instead of just being quiet all the time, I could have entered into those discussions and encouraged some women there. And that's where I was playing small. I was just, nobody wants to hear anything. Don't say anything. If you don't say anything, you're not going to get in trouble. That was my mindset.
So self-limiting beliefs that really do hold us back. And how can people overcome that? Now that you're a coach yourself, are you helping people to realize what their self-limiting beliefs are and what to do about them?
Yeah. One of my coaches says, it's Dr. Gary Morris. I did some training with him and got certified in his program. But he said it all starts with Romans 12:2, transforming our minds.
Yes.
And like I said, I had to understand that I am worthy, that God has given me gifts and abilities. I'm not just on this earth to take up space. My purpose is to glorify God. That's what he says. He created us to bring glory to himself. We are here to glorify him. Well, playing small doesn't glorify him.
Yep. Absolutely.
Not answering, not engaging with other people to encourage them, to point them to Jesus, whatever, that's not glorifying God. So as I'm coaching, it's like, what has God placed you here for? First of all, your purpose doesn't ever change, and that's to glorify God. How you walk that purpose out is going to change, but your purpose is to glorify God. So if you're sitting in the background and you're hiding and you're afraid to engage because it could get a little dicey sometimes, and it does, I want to encourage you to step forward because we need you. This world needs you. There is someone who is just waiting for you to interact with them. And when you do, you're bringing glory to God. And I'm going to go out on a limb here, Greg.
Okay.
I don't believe in retirement. I don't think it's a biblical principle. I haven't believed that for many, many years. I do believe that God just reassigns us. Just like Dave and I have gone through the last 2 years. We're on a new assignment. We're on a new adventure. Doesn't mean that in 5 years or whatever, when he stops teaching, that we're going to retire. It just means we're on to a new adventure. We're already talking about what that might be.
Do you have any advice for people over 50 who might be struggling in that area, who are not quite sure what they want to do in their retirement or after turning 50 that gives their life more meaning and purpose?
Try things.
Try.
You never know.
There's always something that you've always wanted to do, probably, and you're too afraid to do it.
You're too afraid to do it. I heard of one man who always wanted to take pictures. And so he bought himself a camera. He took a basic photography course and he started taking pictures, and they're amazing. You know, if we stop thinking about the fact that if we have to take comparison out of the picture. We can't look at, well, I'm not as good as so-and-so.
Right.
So what? So what? You're not so-and-so. You're not supposed to be. I have 2 paintings that I'm looking at here in my office, painted by 2 different people that I know and love. They're very different and they're both wonderful. But if they were to compare themselves, they would come up short in their eyes because, well, I don't paint like he did, and he doesn't paint like she did. They're both amazing, and I love them. They bring me joy every day. I look at my grandchildren, and I've got 15 of them. I look at them, and every single one of them is unique.
Yep.
And I just delight in what I see the Lord bringing up in them, and the gifts and the talents and the abilities to see them. We have 3 of them that are the same age, a set of twins and another cousin that we're all born within 6 months of each other. They are all so unique. They get along together so beautifully. In some ways they think alike, in some ways they look alike, and yet to see them live in their gifts the way that God has created them is so much fun. And I love calling that out in them. If you are over 50, there are young people in this world who are desperate for someone to tell them they're going to survive the next day.
Exactly.
Go sit in a coffee shop and talk to the kids.
That's right. I interviewed a woman a couple of years ago who does that. She mentors young people by inviting them to her house. They have snacks while they put together a puzzle. And the conversations that they've had together over the years have been life-changing for these kids.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And for the person, the old person.
Right.
You know, I mean, I think about, you know, I've heard older adults, and I'm in that category, so I've heard it. And it is that, well, they don't want to have anything to do with me. They don't care what I have to say. Really, that's not been my experience. Mm-hmm. For 10 years, I was a mentor mom for a mom's group. And I loved sitting with those moms, just holding their babies so that they didn't have to for a while, that they could interact with their friends. But loving their babies loved them. Mm. And then they would come and talk. So many times I'd get a message saying, hey, would you come over? And I would really like to spend some time with you. But with my kids, and I'm like, I will come to you. It's fine. I don't have those ties. Mm-hmm. Like I said, meeting them on a playground, going and meeting them at a coffee shop. You want to have some fantastic conversations? Go to a coffee shop. I spent 2.5 hours in one that I'm thinking about on one occasion with this woman who just said, would you, I'd like to talk to you. And I'm like, didn't know her for anybody, but I said, okay, I'll meet you. Met her 2.5 hours as she was pouring out her story. I was like, Lord, this is why I'm here. Because she needs to know she's going to get through this and that God didn't abandon her.
Yeah.
Because she felt abandoned.
That's right. And that's how the pain that we have in our lives allows us to speak to other people who've been going through that same thing. So how can people connect with you if they would like to follow you or to ask you some questions?
It's really easy. It's my name, which of course is not easy, but we'll get it to you. Greg will get it to you. It's KirstenDSamuel.com. And Kirsten is Kirsten. D as in Diane, and Samuel, just like the first name Samuel, Samuel. On social media, it's the same thing. I am on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel there. Those are the main places that you can find me. I'm other places too, but those are the main. And if somebody is relating to the whole story of I'm dealing with marriage betrayal, on the homepage of KirstenDSamuel.com, it says complimentary session. It's a big button. You cannot miss it unless you're blind. It's right there. Click that. Talk to me. Make an appointment. It's a 30-minute session, and I want to hear your story.
That's right.
I believe in you.
And
I want to hear your story.
And to give people hope.
Yeah.
Yes.
There is a way through.
People can get an autographed copy of your book, too.
They can. Greg will have a link that they can click on. The only thing I'm asking is that you pay $6 for shipping and handling. I will autograph it for you. And so when you click that link, it's going to have a little form there where it tells me you have to give me your name so I can autograph it for you. give me your name and where am I sending the book, because that would be a good thing to know as well. So it's just a really simple form. And if you want to get more than one copy, you can. If you want me to send autograph one for another person, there's a place in there that you can tell me to do that as well. But I'd love to, you can read my story. It's choosing a way out because that was a choice to make a different choice than what was presented to me.
That's awesome. You have some free resources available?
I do. I have a couple of them. One of them is called 5 Steps to Calm Yourself After Marriage Betrayal. Again, Greg will have that link available for you. It is a downloadable PDF. Simply what can you do in the first 5 minutes after something you feel the betrayal? And literally it starts with, you've got to take a breath. Because so many times when we're dealing with major trauma, major, something, we hold our breath. Well, that doesn't help our body at all, or our brain, because we're depriving it of oxygen and we need oxygen. So literally one of the very first things you can do to ground yourself in a traumatic situation is to breathe. So that's the very first thing. There's 4 other items in that. And then the other one that I have that Greg will have the link for is called 11 Shame-Provoking Lies People Tell About Porn Addiction. You'll be surprised what they are. But it's again, that's a PDF you can download, you can print, whatever, but it is amazing to me. These were compiled several years ago. I wrote this, compiling a lot of the things that I kept hearing, things that were said to me, but things that I kept hearing as well related to porn addiction, and how I wanted to combat that with what does God have to say. And so that's what that book is.
Do you have any resources for moms who might be telling themselves lies?
5 Lies Moms Believe.
Yeah.
Again, if you go to my website, on there, it says resources. It's books. It's right there. The link is right there. But 5 Lies Moms Believe. And if somebody reaches out and says, hey, I want an autographed copy of it, Greg can let me know. Or you can send me on my website. You can there's a contact me on there. You can just say, I'd really like a autographed copy. Happy to send it to you.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for sharing your story with me today. I enjoyed it. I think it's inspirational. It's a problem that so many people truly face, or they're impacted by, and they either don't want to admit it that's going on, or they've admitted it but don't know where to go from there. And so you can help them in both directions.
That's right.
Thank you again. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Greg. It's great to be with you.
Thanks for listening to my conversation with Kirsten Samuel. What stayed with me is how Kirsten connected purpose to courage. She and her husband made a major move later in life, stepped into new work, and kept saying yes to opportunities they never saw coming. That included coaching and speaking, as well as coordinating cruises and helping other people to tell their stories through books. Kirsten also spoke honestly about marriage betrayal and the emotional impact of pornography, especially the shame and identity wounds that can hit a spouse hard. She reminds people that shame does not get the final word, healing is possible, and you can come out of the other side with more freedom and joy than you ever thought you could experience. If you want to learn more about Kirsten, find her at kirstensamuel.com. You can also find her on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube using the same name. There are links in the show notes for several resources Kirsten offers, including an autographed copy of her book, Choosing a Way Out, for just $6 to cover shipping and handling, a free PDF download of 5 Steps to Calm Yourself After a Marriage Betrayal, and a free PDF download of 11 Shame-Provoking Lies People Tell About Porn Addiction. Her books, Choosing a Way Out and 5 Lies Moms Believe, are available on her website as well as on Amazon. If you are dealing with marriage betrayal and want to talk with Kirsten, she mentioned a complimentary 30-minute session to talk about what you're going through. On our website homepage, look for a button that says Complimentary Session. That's all for this week's show. If you'd like to start living a more meaningful life, I encourage you to download our free guide to finding purpose, which is available at www.forwardfrom50.com. I'll have another inspirational interview on the next episode of the Forward from 50 podcast. Thanks for listening, and if you like this show, please consider leaving a review wherever you download the episodes.